Hi, I'm Dave Teja. Welcome to another edition of Community Reports. Tonight we have Ron Lewis, a new author, who is going to talk to us about his acquaintance with some of the principal characters involved in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. Ron, welcome to Community Reports.
Hi.
Why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you came to be where you are?
Well, I met Lee Harvey Oswald in 1962, and I was a fugitive from justice at the time, and I had done a small prison term in Oregon. I wasn't exactly in love with the American government, so we became good friends. We met again in 1963 in New Orleans, and he got me a job working for Guy Bannister, who was a private detective. Most people will identify with him from the movie JFK, that he was the man at 544 Camp Street and was played by Ed Asner.
How did you come to meet Lee Harvey Oswald?
Quite by accident. I walked into the Jaggers, Childs, and Stovall place where he was working. It was a place where they made army maps, and we had some work done there, me and a guy named Butch Stone. And then it was about a year later that I met him again. Not quite a year, but the summer of '63. And that's where I met him in New Orleans, and we became very good friends.
Was the second meeting also by accident?
Quite by accident.
What did you and Oswald have in common?
What did we have in common? We both were intrigued by political activities, things like the anti-Castro movement. Although when I first met him, he seemed to be pro-Castro, but he began to change, and in the end was an anti-Castro participant.
Well, from beginning to end, how long was that?
It was a year from when I first met him till I last met him in October 11th of 1963, but we spent about a little over 2 months together that summer in New Orleans.
Did it seem a little unusual to you that he would go from being pro-Castro to anti-Castro in that period of time?
Not really, because what motivated him mostly was his intrigue of political activities. And I don't think he really cared which side he was on, as long as it was intriguing.
He died in November of 1963, did he not?
Yes.
How long had you seen him before his death?
The last day I saw him was October the 11th.
What was he doing when you saw him on October the 11th?
He came to New Orleans to meet me, and no one knows that he left Dallas. That he told his landlord that he was going to be in his room all day Thursday evening and all day Friday, and to not disturb him. So he read James Bond 007 magazines or books, and that motivated a lot of the things that he did in his life. So he went down a tree out of his room, took a bus to New Orleans, talked to me, and did whatever else he was going to do in New Orleans, took the bus back. No one ever knew he was gone. But most of the books say that he was in his room all day Friday, and that's where he was. And I'm the only person that really knows that he took that trip.
What did you guys talk about?
We talked about killing the president. That he was afraid. I had known about this before, and he was afraid that I was going to tell. And he actually told me that he came there to kill me. And he allowed me to talk him out of it. And so I think that really he didn't intend to kill me, but to impress on me how serious the situation was, that I had to keep my mouth shut, and if I wanted to live.
Did he reveal any plans to you when he talked to you in October?
No plans. He just said it was going to take place in Dallas. That's all I really knew.
At that particular time, was it common knowledge that the president was going to be in Dallas later on?
I think it might have been. There's a lot of people that have said it was in the newspapers on the 19th of November about his route and everything. But I think that a lot of people were sure that he was going to come to Dallas because his vice president was from Texas and he needed the Texas vote very bad.
How many other of the principal characters involved and whose names we've heard over the years as being connected with the assassination, how many of those people were you acquainted with?
The ones that I knew of at 544 Camp Street that was actively involved in the conspiracy was Guy Bannister, Clay Shaw, David Ferry, Roscoe White, Lee Oswald, and Jack Ruby. And I myself wasn't a participant, but I was hearing these things every day, and I knew about it.
You mentioned an address on Bank Street. What is the significance of that address?
544 Camp Street?
Camp Street, I'm sorry.
That's where Bannister had his office. That's where we stored the arms that we shipped to Lake Ponce secret training camp for the anti-Castros.
Okay, Bannister was an investigator of some sort?
He was an investigator, but his principal clients were the FBI and the CIA. And he was actively involved in furnishing the Cubans with their arms, the anti-Castro Cubans at that time.
Did Bannister hire you to do anything?
Yes. He hired me to infiltrate, I guess that's the word you'd use, the Gillis Long for Governor campaign. Because Gillis Long had, he was a congressman, and he had been a captain in the Army, and he had been at the Nuremberg trials. And Bannister felt that he knew where there was some nice German arms stored in Europe yet that he could get a hold of. And he was interested in these because Kennedy had quit paying the bills at 544 Camp Street in July. And Carlos Marcello, crime figure, took up the paying the bills after July.
Are you saying that the president himself paid bills for Bannister's office?
That's what I understood, that it came from that source.
If you were listening to these people talk about assassinating the president, what plans did you hear them discuss?
Merely that the president was going to be killed. That I didn't get the details. I did know that they had a plan to kill him in Washington, D.C. on the 26th of September. But that was what I found out was a decoy plan to see if anyone in the organization would tell about that, and they could be eliminated, and that happened. There were people eliminated at that time.
Who was eliminated?
One character I knew only by sight. One person that I knew only by sight. And there was another person named Nagel that had gone to El Paso to try to get away and tell about the assassination. And he was trailed by one of Bannister's men, and he went into a bank and shot in the ceiling 2 times to get arrested. And he said, "This is a stick-up," and shot in the ceiling 2 times. And he was arrested and given 2 years for that, what he did there. But after he got out of prison, he went back to work for the CIA. This is common knowledge amongst scholars.
Well, but you haven't described his death.
His death, he's still alive.
Okay, and he would know the same things that you know?
Yes, but he works for the CIA, and there's no way. Perhaps he's retired now, but there's no way that he's going to talk because he probably wants to stay alive too.
What about the other fellow, the man you knew by sight, but whose name you didn't know? What happened to him?
He was laying in the Lafayette Square, and I was sitting on a park bench, and that's right by 544 10th Street. And he was arrested by two policemen. And I told Lee about this. I said, Lee, there was a man arrested today in the park. And he said that was impossible, because he said, the police don't arrest people in Lafayette Park. He said, this is protected by diplomatic immunity. And he said, look, over there is the CIA, and over there is the FBI, and there's Bannister's office. And he said, you see us loading every day arms to take out to the anti-Castro base. And he said, the police don't bother us. He said, no one gets arrested. I said, well, what happened then? And he said, that man was somebody from Washington and watching 544 10th Street and was arrested by two policemen that weren't really two policemen. I said, well, what happened to the guy? And he said, he's probably dead by now.
Did you ask him any more?
No, I didn't like to get too deep into those kind of things because I didn't want to know too much.
Why would Oswald or any of these other people have confided in you?
Oswald would have made a poor spy because almost everything he did, he told me about. I admit he didn't tell me everything, but he told me a good deal. And he just had that thing about him that he needed someone to talk with. He needed someone to tell. And I was more or less a captive audience because I was a fugitive from justice, and he knew it, and Bannister knew it, and they used those kind of things against you, too.
Other than Oswald, how many of these people did you have this kind of a conversational relationship with?
I met David Ferry and Guy Bannister, but we never discussed these things. But just the fact that they discussed with me the work I was doing in the Jealous Long campaign, that let me know that there was a connection, that Lee was telling me the truth, that he was working for Guy Bannister. And this is something that the government doesn't like to admit, that he was working for Guy Bannister. And this is very clear in my mind that he was.
How'd Gillis Long do in the campaign and the election?
He came out third, actually. McKeithen won. There was McKeithen, Morrison, Long, and 10 others running for the governorship. And in Louisiana, the top contenders, if they don't get enough vote to get the governorship or win the election, they have a runoff election. If you remember the David Duke election, there was a two-way runoff. In this case, there was a three-way runoff that each one of them had not gotten enough votes, but had gotten enough to be in a three-way runoff. So they had that on December the 7th.
Why did these people want to kill John F. Kennedy?
The Cuban Missiles crisis was one of them. He left missiles in Cuba, and the ones that were taken out aboard the Russian boats were decoys that the Russians intended to take out in case they were found out. But they left the real ones in there, and Kennedy knew it, and it infuriated Bannister and his associates. And then there was the signing of the nuclear test ban, the nuclear test ban treaty in Moscow that he signed against the advice of the chiefs of staff. And there were many other reasons, the Negro issue that Bannister and his associates and J. Edgar Hoover was against integration. And he was making so many waves, and my book names 9 other reasons that there was no way to impeach the man. He was too popular, and the only way that they could take care of him was to eliminate him. And that's exactly what happened. A lot of people say, well, we talk about the involvement in Vietnam. He had taken out 1,000 men, and he said the rest would be out by Christmas. That was only a month away. And the bullet that actually killed Kennedy killed 57,000 young Americans, because had Kennedy lived, that war would not have existed. But when Johnson came on board, he rescinded that order and started sending troops to Vietnam. And I know that it was in the interest of big business to do that.
How exactly was President Kennedy killed? Well, we know he was shot. We know that he was shot in the head, but who did it? How did it...
There's a lot of controversy about that, and the only controversy that exists in my mind is the determination of the government to continue to say that he was shot from the depository window, from behind. And from all evidence that all the researchers have come up with is that he was shot from the front because his head, went backwards. And nobody shot in the head from the back. It is going to go backwards. And besides, the explosion in the back, right-hand back side of his head, was from an exit wound. No entrance wound will explode like that and, damage the skull in that fashion. So there's been a lot of controversy about that, but it's just because people don't, I don't mean people, I mean high-ranking people. The grassroots American people believe there was a conspiracy. This is the 14th town that I've been to in book signings and on radio talk shows, and where people called in, and we've had 6 and 8 people call in on a talk show. And we've yet to see anyone that believes that it wasn't a conspiracy, that Posner is right in his book that just come out. That's not a true book.
Okay. You've mentioned your book. Why don't you tell us about your book?
It's principally about Lee Harvey Oswald and his life and how he became involved in the assassination. It's also about a group of a knot of disgruntled politicians and right-wing associates that I met. And, this is from first-hand viewpoint. And so I met all these people, and I tell this from the things that I had seen, not from a researcher's viewpoint.
When did you write the book?
I started in 1988. It was on the 25th anniversary when Time magazine came out with a cover story, was Connolly the real target? And I knew him not to be the real target, and I knew so many things that they were guessing about that I decided I will write this book because I was there, I seen it, and I was actually involved. And in 1990, I met Oliver Stone to the JFK Assassination Information Center, and was hired as his technical advisor for the movie JFK. Spent over a year working on that. And in '92, the movie came out. I believe it was in December. And I was in Eugene, Oregon, and seen the first movie. And there was a newspaper journalist there interviewing the people that seen it. That interview was so interesting that I actually put it in the book, that these people just about describe what people across the country are asking me and the way they feel about the assassination. And I thought it covered such a cross-section there in Eugene that I put it in the book.
What about your book so far as, well, what's its title?
It's Flashback, the Untold Story of Lee Harvey Oswald. It's available in this area in 2 bookstores, in B. Dalton's in the mall and Bookland in Marysville.
How are sales going?
Pretty good, especially when I come to a town like this. I sell a lot of books. We've sold as few as 6 books at one signing in Albany, Oregon. In Eugene, Oregon, we sold 109. And that's a lot of books. And so it's just right in between 6 and 109.
Okay. Do you have any idea who actually shot President Kennedy?
I met Roscoe White in 1963, and he told me that he was, Lee was the one that told me, but I met Roscoe White, that Roscoe was to kill the president. At that time, I didn't know anything about a triangulation of fire. I do now because I've been involved in the movie, and I was did a lot of research and read a lot of books. So now I know about the triangulation of fire. But in 1963, I just knew that Roscoe White was to be one of the trigger men. And I also knew he was to join the Dallas Police Department along the first part of October. And history books show that he did join on the 7th of October, I believe it was.
Does that mean a Dallas police officer actually shot the President of the United States?
That's what it means. Absolutely.
Where was Roscoe White when he fired the shot?
From all evidence, because I wasn't there, I'm glad of that, from all evidence, he was behind the picket fence. And exactly where a man in uniform was pictured in some of these movies, home movies that was taken, and some of these amateur photographers that took pictures that day.
What sort of weapon did he use?
A rifle. I don't know exactly what kind of rifle it was, but it was a rifle. And I suppose it was a Carcano. I believe it was, there was, from a lot of the books claim that 7 Carcanos was ordered for that shooting. Not just the one that they found in the depository, but they had others.
Was Oswald actually in the depository building?
There's no way to place him anywhere else. He had to have been exactly where he said he was.
What was he doing there?
He worked there.
No, I mean at the time of the motorcade.
He was drinking the soda pop on the 2nd floor. He had just come up from the lunchroom to the 2nd floor. This is well corroborated. And the elevator was in a position that he couldn't have come down from the 6th floor. The only way to come down from the 6th floor was a stairway. And there was 2 people that went up that stairway at that time that he would have met. No one come down that stairway at that time.
Well, what about the Carcano rifle that was found there? Did he have any connection with that?
That was his rifle. Yes, he had a connection to that. And I admit that Lee was involved in the assassination.
What did he do?
A good question. What he did was served as a patsy. That's all I can come up with. I can't come up with any. He did carry the rifle there. There's no doubt about that. He called it curtain rods, but The rifle was carried there that morning, and it took 90 seconds after the shot was fired, a policeman arrived at the pop machine where Oswald was on the second floor. He wasn't out of breath. He didn't, when they gave him the paraffin test, he didn't have any residue on his face from shooting the rifle. There's too many unanswered questions. We've got the release of the files now, and we're getting files that are completely blacked out. I saw one page that didn't have any writing on it, just black. It was released to us, you know. Now this tells me a story.
We're running out of time. What happened to Roscoe?
Roscoe died in an explosion in 1971.
Was there anything suspicious about the explosion?
Yes.
Suggesting that he might have been killed to keep him quiet?
Just exactly like the others. Roscoe had killed 128 other people, and he was a CIA hitman. He had left a diary, and after it was read by his son, and he called the FBI, and they confiscated that diary.
Ron, I'm not going to ask you another question. I'm going to give you 1 minute because we're running out of time. What else would you like to tell the audience this evening?
I would like to tell them to not be fooled by the releasing of the files. They're doing this with a straight face. I don't know how they can do that, and everything blacked out, and asking our children to believe that. People our age, they asked us once before to believe them, and they made such a cover-up that most people aren't able to believe them our age. But now they're asking our children to do that. That's why I go from town to town and try to educate people, and I like them to come down to my book signings so that we can talk face to face. They have a lot of questions to ask, and I'd like to answer any question that they have to ask.
Ron Lewis, thank you very, very much for being with us this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us this evening. We appreciate your watching Community Reports, and we hope very much that you will join us next week when we broadcast yet another interview. Thank you very much.